This generation doesn't just want to hear your ideas, they need to see power. Are you ready as a missional team to get on your faces before God and to ask the Holy Spirit to turn up and to start doing amazing things?
All the forces gathered in the 20 years thinking period. And this reign of terror to ensue. One ominous event after another. With questions of peace and neutrality, and with the desirability of domestic harmony in the face of the foreign situation.
John Wesley once said, "I just light myself on fire and people come from miles around to watch me burn." I want to tell you the importance of dousing yourself spiritually with kerosene so that the Holy Spirit can come and ignite your life. My friend Brian, who is a church planner, once said that God convicted him of telling everybody in his church that they were an Acts chapter 2 church. The Holy Spirit tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Brian, when have you ever been in Acts chapter 1 church?" In Acts chapter 2, when you see the Holy Spirit come upon the apostles, it says that tongues of flame appeared above their head. The imagery there is powerful. It's that of being a lamp, being so filled with the oil of the Holy Spirit that the Holy Spirit is able to blaze. And there's another thing that God was trying to communicate through the use of the symbol of fire. And that is because fire above everything else, completely, unashamedly, without reserve, consumes everything in front of it. And it spreads. This generation doesn't just want to hear your ideas, they need to see power. One man wrote that we strip Christianity of the supernatural, and all we have left over is a dead, lifeless husk, no longer worthy to be believed in. The fact is, the early church demonstrated the power of God, and the people around them couldn't ignore it. Are you ready as a missional team to get on your faces before God and to ask God for the power, as Jesus said, "Then you will be my witnesses when power comes on you from on high." The fact is, it's all too easy to do church without God. And the generation that's walked out on the church, the young people, all they've seen is hypocrisy and a bunch of words. But there are things that we absolutely need the Holy Spirit for. I can start a church, I can rent a hall, I can set up chairs, I can put out leaflets, but one thing I can never do, no matter how hard I try, is what Paul said when he said, "I sowed, Apollos watered, but the Holy Spirit alone, God, gave the increase." If you mean business about bringing Christ into a community, and you're more concerned about God's glory shining out than you are about playing church, then the Holy Spirit's going to turn up. And He's going to do things you didn't expect. He's going to do miracles. He's going to heal people. The golden rule of church planning when it comes to the Holy Spirit is to remember to be ready for surprises. Be ready for the Holy Spirit to turn up and do whatever in the heck He wants. Your theology aside, God will sometimes do things that you can only stand back in awe and amazement and say, "That was God. I don't even know what just happened." First time we saw miracles, all I knew was that the Holy Spirit was like the wind. I didn't know where He's coming from. I didn't know where He was going, and I didn't know how in the heck He did it. The fact is, there are things that I can never do. No matter how hard I try, I can never make one person believe in the gospel, and I can't do a single miracle. When I planted my first church, I was a little evangelical boy just minding my own business. And then wham, as we stepped out in faith and planted, God turned up and started doing stuff that blew my mind. And that was just the beginning of the kind of stuff that God started doing. Miracles started falling. People had hands laid on them and they were healed. We weren't some kind of freak show. We just cared about people getting saved. But Jesus turned up and showed people He was real. When you start to do a church plant, the Holy Spirit will turn up if you make it all about Jesus. And He will want to show Himself real in the people's lives that you're witnessing to. The fact is, when Peter stood up and spoke to the men of Israel, he said, "Men of Israel, why do you look at us? As if we by our own power or godliness made this man walk." But this was done so that you would know that Jesus alone has the power to do this. We want people to see Jesus. And the good news to us is that God uses knuckleheads. Peter's first miracle was one where he stepped back amazed and told everybody, confess, this isn't me. Trust me, I'm a knucklehead. My friends, that's the kind of person that God uses. If your church plan is ready to go in and mean business, then the Holy Spirit is going to turn up and use you. But isn't that the testimony of the book of Acts? That God uses ordinary people who aren't full of themselves, but instead they're full of the Holy Spirit? Isn't it usually that when they step out, the Holy Spirit turns up? Isn't it really that the more and more that they put the words of Jesus to the test, that He has all authority and He'll be with them to the end of the age, that they step out in faith? As we step out in faith in obedience to the commands of Jesus, the Holy Spirit is always faithful to turn up and to start doing amazing things. The fact is, church planting is the closest thing you're ever going to get to the book of Acts. Why? Because that's what they were doing. And they sure knew that they needed the Holy Spirit to turn up when they were going to do it. Bottom line, we need to be an Acts chapter 1 church before we ever see an Acts chapter 2 church. We're not going to see the Pentecost experience until we begin to seek God on mission. Hearing Jesus' words, you'll be my missionaries to the ends of the earth, or my witnesses. This year alone, 3,500 churches will close. In America, there are 250 million unreached people with no contact with church whatsoever. The fact is that the postmodern world is bringing the church to its knees. We need God again in America. Don't think for a second that having more Bible programs or more books on our shelves is going to help get us out of this mess. John Wesley said it's astonishing to see how the devil is filling our heads while at the same time emptying our hearts. The reality is that we need the Holy Spirit. That means that your team is going to have to seek God in prayer. And you're going to have to ask other people outside of your circle to pray with you, to pray for you. You need air support while the troops are on the ground. And the only way to call them in is to get on your knees and ask the Holy Spirit to turn up. Paul writes to the Ephesians and he says, be filled with the Holy Spirit. He wrote it as an imperative, almost as a command. In other words, being filled with the Holy Spirit is a choice. The question is, are you ready to douse yourself with gasoline and be set on fire?